Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 75th audio file in the audio cast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SG Anon. I hope each of you out there enjoys winning, because that is the theme that we have for our file today. A tremendous amount of progress being made on the battlefield in relation to deep underground criminal syndicate networks, the bleeding out and splintering of the NATO warlord alliance, and the destruction of the worldwide SWIFT financial system, among others, are causality for great joy and high morale. Going through this process, Patriots, it does sometimes get arduous, but we have to remember that those that came before us paved the way for where we're at today, for us to do the work that we're doing, to awaken mankind, to move us out of a deep state capture of not only government, but our very way and institutions of life itself. This and more has all been prepared by those that have given their life, whether in a military or civil service capacity, or even in a digital service capacity, making themselves targets of a very power-hungry and very power-jealous regime. I thought we would start out our file today before we get into the meat and potatoes with calling attention a little bit, if I can use that term, to an individual that came before us and I believe gave us a very good example. What I'm about to read to each of you is a journal entry from a gentleman named Matthew. The entry was put in on August the 2nd of 2009, immediately prior to Matthew's deployment to Afghanistan on behalf of the U.S. Armed Forces mission there. It reads, "Mom, Dad, I can never repay you for all you have done for me. You made me into the man I am today. I hope that I've made you proud. That has always been my goal. I love you both so much. Tell the girls that I love them and couldn't be a prouder older brother. I have always tried to be an honorable man, and I truly believe in what we are doing here. I'm doing this for my family, so that they need not fear. My country, so that it can be a beacon of light for the entire world. The men around me, because no one could ask for a more august company than the men of the U.S. Armed Forces. And finally, I do this for myself, so that I might know the measure of myself, and in the end, not be found wanting. I believe it is my duty to fight, and having done all that I can, to simply stand against this and all evil that works upon the earth." Prior to Matthew's leaving for Afghanistan, in a footnote at the bottom of the journal entry, it reads, "A coin with the word Ephesians on it was clasped into his parents' hands, and he whispered, 'You don't have to worry about me. God will be with me.'" Matthew was killed in the course of duty and did not return home. And here on this program, we take his sacrifice and the sacrifice that all veterans, men and women, and we the people warriors from all over the world and all walks of life have made to try and awaken humanity and alert us to the infiltration that was going on right before our eyes. That's why we're here, Patriots, to undo that very infiltration and to give meaning and honor and I think valiance again to the sacrifices that Matthew and many others have made on our behalf. Without further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to start today with our discussion around the Iranian assassination. Very recently, we saw a helicopter plunging from the skies into a mountainous, highly remote region in northwestern Iran. Almost immediately, rumors began spreading in the social media and online digital warrior space of possible assassination. And indeed, that does appear to be the conclusion that we should arrive at. Let's examine a little bit behind this event. If we come over to Google Earth and go back to that particular day, we discover that the weather radar information from the 19th of May has been deleted. The information being deleted is absolutely fascinating because the obvious question is why and who ordered the deleting. The why is a bit of a speculation, but here on this program, we're well aware that weather radar, specifically NEXRAD, is well capable of picking up atmospheric anomalies that were not intended to be picked up by various military actors. We also have weathermen that have admitted live on TV television that the military does in fact control and seed the weather, and gave essentially an overview of a very brief overview of how that process affects his reporting pertaining to cloud cover and the imagery that is showing up on the radar screen behind him. I find it very fascinating then that if you look at the flight data for May the 19th, you find a U.S. Air Force C-17 Loadmaster, I believe that's the name of it, a very large cargo aircraft, and it was flying in a northeasterly fashion, having departed from a Jordanian air base east over Iraq, then northwest over eastern Turkey, and then making a loop again east to land in none other than Azerbaijan. This airframe would have been exactly dead west of the same airspace region that the Iranian presidential helicopter went down in. At the conclusion of its flight path, this particular airframe, which had a call sign RCH 348, landed in landed in the city of Baku. According to online reports, no American military aircraft have landed in Baku for more than 13 months. It's absolutely fascinating then that we see this particular flight path occur at the same time that we saw the Israeli War Room social media account post a single emoji of a helicopter at 7:58 a.m. This would have been well before most of the Western world was aware of what was happening. It also would have been in the very early hours of these events actually themselves transpiring. And we know, based on decodes that we've done on this particular program, Anons, that the entity known as Q has had the ability to interfere with Israeli military intelligence, specifically Mossad intelligence, having admitted so in a particular drop, which predated the October 7th event of 2023 by just a few days on I believe it was a 4 or 5 year delta. So wouldn't it be, isn't it very appropriate then that on the 20th, the 20th or 21st of May, it's unclear based on online reports that the intelligence service chief of Iran was also assassinated through gunshot to the head. On the same day, the chief of the Iranian National Police was targeted for assassination, struck by 7 bullets. We're seeing, I believe, a series of alliance assassinations that are going to remove deep state actors and obstacles on the playing field and allow the deep state military, industrial, and military intelligence community to shoulder essentially the blame for those assassinations. If you are those deep state communities, you certainly can't come out and admit to the public that you've lost that kind of control over your own governmental protective security details, and you also cannot come out and admit that there are splintering factions within your own base, right? This is a no-win situation on behalf of these deep state forces, and at the same time, we remove significant opponent objects on the game board. Now, one of the things that has been put out regarding the Iranian presidential and foreign ministerial assassinations is that these assassinations may have been mop-up operations for disappearances that had already occurred. And while I can't confirm or corroborate that, I can say that it is entirely possible because it's only been a few months back that the Iranian military declared its intent to establish military operations in Antarctica. And Antarctica is known, as well as several other regions throughout this particular irregular war that we're living in, as a base of operations to some degree for components of this military alliance. And we do know that prisons and tribunals have been put down there and have been held there. So regarding, the conditions behind the assassination, whether for good or for ill, we can conclude, I believe, that it is a white hat, if we can use that terminology, operation, and yet it will stoke the flames of destabilization further in the Middle East. And this, of course, is the entire point. The Israeli Mossad intelligence community, in league with the central banksters of the world, the worldwide SWIFT financial system, and the U.S. military industrial machine, has managed to carve out essentially an insular bubble within that Middle Eastern sphere that has allowed it to operate with veritable impunity. And we are now removing that impunity, destabilizing that entire security situation. And one of the things that has been done, I believe, very purposefully is the splintering of the Israeli Defense Force and the sheer demand that has been placed on them in a microcosmic level, sort of in the same fashion that NATO as a whole has been stretched to the limits with the armament of Ukraine the excuse me, unwillingness of Hungary to abide by NATO military actions, with announcements seen in recent weeks, and the very clear and distinct possibility that Turkey, a NATO member and the largest standing army in the Middle East, will lead a coalition that are actually against the NATO Western world government interests into Israel. I do believe that that particular campaign is coming, and I find it very amazing, excuse me, actually awe-inspiring, that the death of the Iranian president, foreign minister, and others actually galvanized the Islamic world in such a fashion that we saw Sunni as well as Shiite pilgrimages coming to Tehran to pay their respects for the fallen leader. Now, this is not to say that all of those individuals paying said respects are either good actors or bad actors or perhaps gray actors. We really don't know. But what it has done, is that it has unified and galvanized the Islamic world for a second time in only a very short period, right? If we fast forward from the events of 10/7 to now, we've witnessed unification ideologically in very significant ways, and I think in ways that are going to determine the activities of military coalitions on the ground in the very near future. We've recently seen the International Criminal Court issue arrest warrants not only for the leadership of Hamas for their participation and complicity in the fomenting and starting of war crime hostility situations, but also specifically a couple of the leaders of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. And it is worth noting that Mr. Netanyahu has not done the Israeli people or the Jewish people any favors with the expansion of this conflict. In fact, he has exposed them to what is potentially the largest amount of existential danger that they've been exposed to in more than a half century, if not since the inception of the Israeli state as we know it. And he is not widely liked by the population within that country. Recently, more than 1.2 million individuals turned out again to petition for the immediate resignation of Netanyahu and the end of the war and military hostilities. At the same time that this has occurred, we've witnessed the expansion of military conflict on the northern border of Israel with Lebanon and Hezbollah, and now we have Syria, I believe, in the mix with the events that have happened recently with Iran, looking at themselves in a very vulnerable position and a position that requires, I think, an entrenchment and a response. So this entire geopolitical paradigm that has developed and is emerging in the Middle East really does not do we the people in any camp, if I can utilize the terminology, any favors. And we're witnessing the realization of that on behalf of very large people groups within their nation states in real time, not just in Israel, but also with Iran, also with Palestine and Gaza, as well as within Turkey. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this coalition, this military coalition that I believe will inevitably end up inside the boundaries of the nation state of Israel. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops. And it's increasingly appearing as though we're going to see an Arab coalition that is partnered with the Chinese. The Chinese have been heavily involved in armament and essentially diplomacy negotiating deals happening in the Middle East for a while. They've also been very heavily involved in economic cultivation and cultivation of relationships towards that end. And the Chinese have recently begun saber rattling to such a degree that the invasion of Taiwan now has a timetable. Switching gears here, coming over to the South China Morning Post, we have Taiwan drills that are now, according to this headline, Taiwan drills shifting focus to the island's eastern side. The Taiwan Coast Guard is operating publicly on the eastern side for the first time. Additionally, as of the 24th of May, so that's today, we have military exercise maps that have been released by the Chinese government. Eastern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army has launched joint military exercise Joint Sword surrounding the island of Taiwan on the 23rd of May. Additionally, we have reports coming out, diplomatic reports from the diplomatic level of intense rhetoric coming from China in recent days. Specifically, this very unusual remark that came from the Chinese ambassador to Japan, a gentleman named Wu Jingyao, who publicly announced on the 23rd of May that the Japanese people will be dragged into, quote, a fiery hell if they pledge to support Taiwan. Now, this is a very intense statement coming from an Asian diplomat. Asian diplomats have been known generationally, ancestrally, for hundreds of years as being very stoic, very shrewd, very slow to emotional involvement in relations. And there's a certain amount, I think, of honor and respect that comes with that. And so having that type of a powerful rhetoric emerge from a diplomat about another Asian nation, that tells me that the situation that has developed literally on the ground, or if we could say on the water, surrounding the ground that is the Taiwanese island, that situation has become very serious. Now, all of this happening for approximately 1 week after Putin and Xi met in Beijing. That meeting ostensibly was to, secure technological and um, various diplomatic cooperations. But as any of us, I think, would apply our common sense to know, military goals and adventures were discussed as well in that particular, meeting, as well as a proclamation that the two of them signed, a joint statement, which proclaimed that the U.S. was offered a host of security issues on everything from Taiwan and Ukraine to North Korea. And the two countries also agreed to cooperate on peaceful nuclear technology and finance transfers. And this brings an interesting point into the mix that I want to highlight for all of you out there, and that is Kim Jong-un, Pyongyang, and North Korea. Our attention is heavily focused, of course, on the activities of the Chinese military. And indeed, the Chinese government released essentially a propaganda campaign ad just a few days hence. Let me see here. Let me see if I can find where this came up. It was released on Chinese state television, and this has been this past Saturday. And the statement on television discusses that the Chinese army intends to launch an attack on Taiwan, likely in early June. The broadcast, let me see here, the broadcast from Chinese state TV declared that China will reclaim Taiwan likely in early June and has begun preparing the Chinese public for political sanctions, isolation, and a warfare situation. China also publicly warned the United States to end its visits to Taiwan and adhere to the One China policy or face consequences. So our eyes are on Taiwan and China and on this developing conflict, but one of the places that our eyes are not is on the situation developing on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea, again with Iran, again with Russia, has a deep state, or has had a deep state component faction of government that has controlled and manipulated their leaders in the background for a very, very long time. And we saw President Trump essentially free Kim and cut those strings during the first Trump administration. To what end, we don't really fully understand yet, but we can say that it's a number of different ends, from various classified information that was sold to the North Korean government to access to U.S. Weapons technology and things of this nature. And we saw a missile crisis actually develop right around the time that President Trump was in Singapore for that particular summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. So understanding then that this Pacific campaign is going to involve all of these Pacific region powers, we have to step back and ask ourselves why. And of course, the answer comes back to, boringly enough as it is, the U.S. military industrial complex and the military intelligence control matrix, right? That machine around the world that has managed to co-opt entire economies and subjugate entire cultural groups based on their control of either one or both sides of the discussion. And the 38th parallel is an example of the control of that discussion. It's one of the reasons that President Trump had to negotiate an end, a true end to the Korean War, because we have to have a situation now develop that is authentic in a new direction, that is not simply the continuation of an old conflict, but the beginning of a new conflict, which will unify, I believe, the Korean Peninsula and will paralyze the Pacific, the U.S. and NATO Western world assets, the Pacific assets that are deployed in that area of the world. It will paralyze them and split them in so many different directions that an adequate response, coupled with a domestic issue perhaps here at home in the United States, will simply not be possible. And we can sort of understand the necessity for this because the Taiwan campaign and the reclamation of Taiwan to the Chinese mainland, much in the same fashion that Ukraine ancestrally has been Russian, and up until the 80s essentially was known almost exclusively as a Russian, province, essentially. This type of reclamation has to occur quickly, and because of the island nature of things, it's going to occur in a way that I think is going to be much more shock and awe. So we've seen development of this campaign now for a long time. Recently, we saw President Trump discussing the issue of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, et cetera, in one of his rallies. And this also ties back to this particular conflict, specifically the Three Gorges Dam. And so we're going to go ahead and get into that in just a moment here. Give me a second. Let's pull this up. So, with all of this talk of the discussion of the coming conflict in the Pacific region, what can we expect as a result of that? We can expect a paralysis of the American military machine, simply because of being split in too many different directions. We can expect conflict to occur on the Korean Peninsula. To what extent and for how long is really anyone's guess and anyone's gain. We can expect the Japanese economy to tank pretty heavily, potentially the bottom falling out of the yen, and that's going to directly affect the U.S. industrial and manufacturing base, and that's very important to remember. We're also going to destroy the International Monetary Fund, right? Because by dumping the U.S. Treasury bonds en masse, which I believe the Chinese government will do with a developing warfare situation, while it will stress the Chinese economy, it will provide much more damage to the North American economic markets, and that is an irregular warfare advantage when you're looking at an unusual operation, and the Chinese are some of the best in the world at carrying out unusual warfare operations. But you can also expect, I believe, a retaliation of some kind against mainland China. And there are a number of targets that have to be destroyed within the mainland Chinese territories that have been used for some of the most sinister evil and manipulation of resources and manipulation of cultural groups for a very, very long time. And the Three Gorges Dam is one of them. The adrenochrome trafficking junctions that exist in the bunkers beneath the dam are rumored to be absolutely enormous. And some of the online research that has been fleshed out in recent years regarding 3G Dam and some of those trafficking networks is very, very disturbing and very dark. And so in that process, you're also going to see, I believe, the cryptocurrency market heavily impacted. We just saw Hong Kong saw a third major cryptocurrency exchange just within the last week withdraw its licensing application. In other words, it doesn't want to be licensed in Hong Kong. The cryptocurrency exchange Gate.io took a proactive step to withdraw its application from the Hong Kong cryptocurrency market. 8 other firms have withdrawn their applications to date, including firms associated with Binance and an affiliate of HTX. So these exchanges know that something is coming significant in the financial world, and this Pacific campaign, I believe, is going to provide one of those proverbial daggers through the heart, if you will, of that worldwide financial system that relies on economic exchange and primarily the movement of fuel and energy. And so with these transitions that are going to occur, isn't it very interesting that we've recently seen U.S. House Resolution 4763 brought back to the table for a discussion and a vote? House Resolution 4763, let me go up here, titled 118th Congress, Second Session, Report Number 118-484, 1 and 2, to provide for a system of regulation of digital assets by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission, and for other purposes. On July 20th of 2023, Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee for Financial Services and in addition to the Committee on Agriculture for a period to be subsequently determined by the Speaker. On May the 6th of 2024, additional sponsors of this bill came forward. On that day, this particular bill was reported from the Committee on Agriculture with an amendment. That amendment struck out all after the enacting clause and insert part printed in italic. All right, so you'd have to read the bill for that. And then it was also reported from the Committee on Financial Services with an amendment committed to the Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union and ordered to be printed. Again, a bill to provide for a system of regulation of digital assets by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission and for other purposes. Now, here's where it gets eerie. Far down in this bill, buried actually 467 pages in, on Section 504, a study on decentralized finance. In general, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission shall jointly carry out a study on decentralized finance that analyzes the following: the nature, size, role, and use of decentralized finance blockchain protocols, the operation of blockchain protocols that comprise decentralized finance, the interoperability of blockchain protocols and systems, the interoperability of blockchain protocols and software systems, including websites and wallets, the decentralized governance systems through which blockchain protocols may be developed, published, constituted, administered, maintained, or otherwise distributed, including whether the systems enhance or detract from the decentralization of finance and any inherent risks of that system, and any procedures or requirements that would mitigate the risks. Also, the committee is directed to carry out a study over the benefits of decentralized finance, including operational resilience and interoperability of blockchain systems, market competition, transaction efficiency, transparency and traceability of transactions, disintermediation, which is a long way of saying the removal of the third party, the following risks of decentralized finance, including pseudonymity of users, disintermediation in a negative sense, and cybersecurity vulnerabilities, the extent to which decentralized finance has integrated with the traditional financial markets, and any potential risks of that stability, how levels of illicit activity in decentralized finance compare with the levels of illicit activity in traditional finance markets, how decentralized finance may increase the accessibility of cross-border transactions, and the feasibility of embedding self-executing compliance and risk controls into decentralized finance. In other words, that quantum control that we've talked about, that ability to disrupt manipulation and corruption at the very beginning. Also, the Comptroller General of the United States shall carry out a study on decentralized finance that analyzes the information described under paragraph 1 through 11 of the above section, and not later than 1 year after the date of the enactment of this act, the comptroller shall submit to the relevant congressional committees a report that includes the results of that study. Now, this is absolutely incredible. According to the definitions coming in the following paragraph, decentralized finance means blockchain protocols that allow users to engage in financial transactions in a self-directed manner so that a third-party intermediary does not effectuate the transactions or take custody of the digital assets of a user during any part of the transaction. Now, this is absolutely remarkable because this coincides absolutely perfectly with the destruction of that International Monetary Fund SWIFT system World Bank model, that central banking Western slave model that has destroyed worldwide culture, worldwide resources, and worldwide justice really since its inception for more than 100 years. We are witnessing the stage being set for the transmutation of an old system into a new way of life, a new system. But that old system does have to be destroyed. It does have to be kinetically altered in its negative aspects. Let me walk that back. The old system has to be captured in the senses that it can be captured, and destroyed in the senses that it cannot be reclaimed, that it cannot be purged or cleaned. And we're witnessing that process playing out right now. As a matter of fact, in Zimbabwe, coming over here, give me just a moment. Recently in Zimbabwe, we've seen an incredible crackdown on black market Forex and currency dealers who are using WhatsApp to evade police. To date, more than 70 Forex street dealers have been arrested in the Zimbabwean police crackdown that began in early May, in April. The government's latest attempt to stabilize the economy by the introduction, alongside the introduction of the Zimbabwe gold currency, the ZiG. The authorities blame currency dealing and manipulation for distorting the exchange rate and devaluing the local currency, and want to ensure that the ZiG is both accepted and does not lose value rapidly like its predecessor. They are literally cleaning up the boots on the ground insurgency force that has made currency manipulation and financial market manipulation possible. The crackdown comes alongside the same time that the Kenyan government has been named a staunch ally of the United States, and we know that the Kenyan government will come into play with regards to one Hussein Obama as we go forward. So this entire pattern of playing out in the financial space, right? This warfare situation that is developing worldwide, it's occurring on a number of fronts for a multitude of different reasons. And we've talked a lot about those reasons so far, but we have not yet talked about the deep crime syndicates that have also been getting targeted and destroyed in this process. Organ harvesting is the word of the day with regards to these crime syndicates. And here is some very good, I would think, and even though it is circumspect, it's very good evidence to show that we have some sort of special forces coordination happening amidst all of the other things that we've just talked about on this file, which is further destabilizing this deep state monster. Taken from 29 of February 2024, the U.S. opens a new page on defense industry ties with the country of Turkey. Taken from turdef.com, senior U.S. officials interviewed by Turkey Defense said that bilateral relations are on the way to improvement in many areas. U.S. officials paid special attention to an ammunition production line, which will be established in Texas. According to those officials who elaborated on the production amounts, 3 separate lines will be established here, each with a monthly production capacity of 10,000 shell bodies. Thus, 30,000 shell bodies will be produced per month when completed. The Turkish company responsible for the installation of the lines, is unnamed. These production lines will be established by Turkish engineers in the state of Texas. In response to the question, officials stated that this was not a technology transfer and added that the Turkish company will install the lines and provide maintenance training to on-the-ground local staff. Now, just 16 days later, we had an article emerge from Business Insider discussing Western special military operations activity is on the rise around a new U.S. partner in a strategic but unstable part of the Mediterranean. Cyprus has lately become something of a hub for Western Special Operations Forces. U.S. Navy SEALs and Cypriot Naval Commandos recently completed a series of exercises, and other Western Special Ops units have deployed to the Mediterranean in response to the Israeli-Hamas war. That is in mid-March. Taken from May the 5th of 2024, Israeli-based organ trafficking network busted in Turkey across 3 states. Police in the Turkish city of Adana detained 11 suspects on allegations of organ trafficking, 5 Israeli, 2 Syrian, and several others in a report established by the Daily Saba on the 5th of May. Further investigation revealed that the Syrian nationals involved had each agreed to sell one of their own kidneys to 2 of the Israelis for kidney transplants in Adana. During searches at the suspects' residences, more than $60,000 in cash and numerous fake passports were seized. Israel has been long at a center of what Bloomberg described in a 2011 report as a sprawling global black market for organs where brokers use deception, violence, and coercion to buy kidneys, among other organs, from impoverished people, mainly from underdeveloped countries, and then sell them to critically ill patients in more affluent nations. The newspaper added many of the black market kidneys harvested by Israeli gangs are destined for people who themselves live in harvested by these other world gangs are destined for people who live in Israel. This trafficking network that was recently destroyed extended from former Soviet republics Azerbaijan, Belarus, and Ukraine to Brazil, the Philippines, South Africa, and beyond. Accusations of Israeli involvement in the trafficking network also apply to the occupied Palestinian territories. In 2009, Sweden's largest daily newspaper, Aftonbladet, reported testimony that the Israeli army was kidnapping and murdering Palestinians on the ground to harvest their organs. Now, these reports are consistent with reports that have occurred since the start of the Israeli-Hamas war, discussing the trafficking of personnel, the trafficking of civilians, and the destruction of some of the Palestinian civilian population, only to have those bodies disappear. It also provides interesting backdrop when we look at the UN medical facilities that had been targeted specifically in Gaza and the tunnels that the Israeli IDF, of all entities, actually has highlighted in this process. And so we are witnessing, I believe, the targeting of one of the largest and oldest organ trafficking networks in the world. This is along the same area that the Silk Road used to run. It essentially allows for connectivity throughout all of mainland Asia, as well as through the Mediterranean and Africa. If you can get to Western Europe with some of these illicit materials, then you can essentially get them around anywhere on the entire planet, out from Western Europe to South America, North America, the Western Hemisphere, etc. And so we're witnessing, I believe, special operators in conjunction with on-the-ground law enforcement in a number of nations targeting these rings. And these rings do happen to coincide, unfortunately, to Israel, to Gaza. Some of them coincide as well to Egypt. These rings are present in eastern Turkey. They're present in Azerbaijan, Belarus, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania. These are very intense and very well very well-established criminal networks, and they are under assault. Taken from switching gears and headed over to more South and Southeast Asia on the same discussion. On the 22nd of November, the anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy here at home, U.S. Special Operations Command posted on their X, formerly Twitter account, that Bangladesh commandos alongside U.S. Special Forces were training together in defense partnership. And then the post goes on to say, our people are deployed in more than 80 countries to operate and train with joint force teammates through embassy engagements. Global Special Operations Forces, 1st Special Operations Command. So that was on the 22nd of November of last year. On March the 5th of 2024, so just about 4 to 5 months later, an article appearing on AF.mil, U.S. Bangladesh bolster tactical airlift interoperability during COPE South 24. Nearly 80 U.S. Air Force service members and 2 C-130 Super Hercules aircraft from the 36th Expeditionary Squadron integrated with Bangladesh for the bilateral tactical airlift exercise COPE South 24 at Bangladesh Air Force Bangandabandhu Cantonment, Dhaka, and operating location Alpha, Sylhet, Bangladesh, February 19 through 28. Appearing just about 12 days ago, it's 12 days ago from the Business Standard, 3 members of organ trafficking ring busted in Bangladeshi city. Police busted a gang that allegedly removed kidneys from at least 10 people, taking them to India. The gang targeted poor families and took them to India with the lure of jobs and later forced them to sell kidneys by taking them hostage. One of the victims recently filed a case with local police. The police then busted the gang that allegedly removed the kidneys from at least 10 people, taking them to India. Coming over here. In New Delhi, organ traffickers were grabbed and seized and detained in the Faridabad area, the police officer said. Later on 4 March, one of the kidneys from the victims was believed surgically removed at a hospital in Gujarat. Efforts are underway to arrest the rest of this particular cell. So we have a pattern here where special operations forces deploy to a particular arena, and then a few months later, civilian law enforcement, likely tipped off by interagency intelligence sharing, goes in and busts these very large organ trafficking rings. That one busted in Turkey covered, I think it was like 5 or 6 countries. So these operations are advancing, and they are advancing forward, and they're advancing at the same time that we're witnessing advancement on behalf of the international monetary side, on behalf of the geopolitical armament side, on behalf of the disempowering of certain almost metaphysical structures, if we could call it that. That's not really the right word I'm looking for, Anon. Certain intangible structures, the NATO alliance, the Atlantic Council, these non-state think tanks and controlling entities that have manipulated the arms of power and influence in the world for so long. We're witnessing a coordinated assault across all regions, across all levels. And that assault does not stop with the rest of the world. It is progressing forward here domestically in the U.S. homeland as well. And I'm going to show each of you a filing here that was absolutely remarkable. This filing was filed with the United States Supreme Court. Let me see here. Filed 2015. On behalf of the Unified United States Common Law Grand Juries. Let me pull this up here. Before I pull this up, Patriots, I want each of you to know and be aware that here in the United States of America, we're setting the tone, we're setting the scaffolding in place for how much of this operation will conclude itself at that civilian level the world over. There's a saying about, so how goes America, so goes the rest of the world. And that's one of the reasons it is so crucial and so important to do all of this by the book. We have Thomas Massie recently introducing a bill to end the Federal Reserve, which received almost immediate co-sponsorship from a number of different representatives within the U.S. House of Representatives. We're witnessing the introduction of House legislation to design a decentralized finance system committee, essentially a commission to put together a report for decentralization of the U.S. financial system. We're witnessing the creation of a scaffolding here domestically in the United States that will be exported to the rest of the world after we remove the old scaffolding, the old cancer, the old infestation, which unfortunately emitted a great deal from Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we're doing is we're filing documentation like this here. Let me bring this over here for you. This was filed in the United States District Court for all districts as well as the Supreme Court of the United States. It was directed by we, the people of the unified United States common law grand juries, identifying as sureties of the peace, commanding county sheriffs, federal agents, U.S. Marshals, Joint Chiefs, state militia, governors, federal and state courts, assemblymen, senators, congressmen, senators, and the news media with a formal writ of Quo Warranto. Silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak or where an injury left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Comes now the constituted unified common law grand juries of the 50 United States of America this evil day to command all county, state, federal, and U.S. Supreme Court judges and clerks to perform their duty, guaranteeing to every state in this union a Republican form of government and protect each of them against invasion or to vacate the office. Coming a little bit further down the page. And I will post this document anons for those of you out there that are trying to read along. We're not going to read all 15 pages. It would be prohibitively time consuming. I will post screenshots of this document to both the Rumble channel and the TruthSocial and X profiles for SG Anon. The Prime Directive ordained by the American people purposed their government to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. The subsequent violent felony acts of war by our servants against the aforesaid Prime Directive debilitate the union of the American people, establish injustice, undermines domestic tranquility, renders the people vulnerable to foreign and domestic enemies, destabilizes the general welfare, and annihilates the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Common sense can only conclude that there are forces within our servant government conspiring war and subterfuge against the American people by denying the very Republican form of government that they took an oath to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Thereby, it is the duty of all oath takers to take a stand now, obey and defend the Constitution, and assist the people in arresting and terminating the following unconstitutional acts by simply obeying the law of the land and acknowledging the unalienable right of the people to self-govern. Judges everywhere are commanded again to obey the law of the land and sign the attached mandamus. The excuse "we are only following orders" did not stand in Nuremberg, and it will most certainly not stand here. To prove the conclusion, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Our servants have refused assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Our servants have trodden upon the rights of the people. Our servants have passed legislation destructive to the Constitution, forbidden by the same. Our servants have exposed we the people to all the dangers of invasion from without and subversion from within. Our servants have obstructed the laws for illegal aliens who are flooding our nation with foreign insurgents, some hostile, destroying our economy and putting at risk the security of our states. Our servants have obstructed the administration of justice by refusing acquiescence to laws established for judiciary powers. Our servants have transformed judges into chancellors, dependent upon the will of the Bar Guild alone, a society of mercenary, economic, corporate hitmen esquires, resolute on destroying common law, the foundation of America. Our servants have erected a multitude of fourth branch administrative agencies unaccountable to the Constitution and sent hither swarms of corporate administratives disobedient to the Constitution, revenue, and code enforcement officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Our servants have kept among us in times of peace standing armies and excessively militarized local police without the consent of the people. Our servants have joined with foreign bankers to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Our servants are secretly accommodating large bodies of armed foreign troops among us. Our servants have imposed a multiple of property-robbing taxes, direct taxes, fees, and fines on us without consent. Our servants have deprived us of the benefits of honest trial by jury. Our servants have deprived us of the benefits of unrigged grand juries. Our servants have transported us into chancery courts to be tried for pretend offenses. Our servants have enlarged its boundary under the guise of the District of Columbia, a 10-mile square federal city, so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing absolute rule into these states. Our servants have arrogantly disregarded our Bill of Rights, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the people's form of government without consent. Our servants have declared power to legislate through executive order without consent. Our servants have waged war against us. Our servants have plundered our manufacturing base, ravaged our small businesses, and destroyed the lives of our people. Our servants have excited domestic insurrections amongst us, have engaged in human trafficking of our children and elderly through the courts, have engaged in racketeering and extortion through our courts, have held mock trials in courts not of record, thereby unlawfully incarcerating and financially fleecing millions of people. They have impaneled bogus puppet, grand, and petite juries in order to perform bar, will, and profiteering. They have stolen our homes in rim and fraud. They have kidnapped our children and destroyed our families. They have robbed our parents, turning their twilight years into nightmares, and have turned our common law courts into courts of injustice. They have transformed our unalienable rights into crimes, violating at every stage our Bill of Prohibitions, serving the bar guild and not the people. Now, this entire document goes on for a number of pages and sort of has a similar flavor. It outlines all of the various acts of insurrection and treason that have been taken against the United States of America. It outlines the way in which the war against the American people and against the peoples of the world has been waged primarily through a corporate administration. It outlines the way that the judiciary has been co-opted to make war against the people. If we come all the way to the bottom of this document, this is what I found very fascinating. You are hereby ordered to order all clerks to obey the law by filing and processing all true bills from common law grand juries as required by law under 18 U.S. Code section 2076 and 2071. All judges are ordered to command all state and federal judges to obey the law of the land as commanded United States Constitution, Article 6, Paragraph 2. All judges are ordered to sign and mail the attached mandamus, which commands all servants in all courts to cease from obstruction and interference of the people's business and access to their courts under 18 U.S. Code 1512b. All judges are to confirm with the court clerks that this Quo Warranto has been filed as required by 18 U.S. Code 2076 and 71, and a time-stamped copy has been mailed to the address above. All judges are to produce a certified copy of your constitutional oath of office as required by Article 6, Paragraph 3 of the Constitution and 5 U.S. Code, Section 3331. All judges are to produce affidavits declaring that you did not pay for or otherwise make or promise consideration to secure your office as per 5 U.S. Code 3332. All judges are to produce their personal surety bond and documentation that establishes your complete line of chain of command of delegated authority, including all intermediaries, beginning with the President of the United States or the governor of the state you claim authority from. These documents should all be filed as public record pursuant to 5 U.S. Code 2906 for requirements concerning filing of oaths. In the event you do not have a personal surety bond, you may provide a copy of your financial statement, which you are required to file annually. Your financial statement will be construed as a private treaty surety bond in the event that you exceed lawful authority. You are commanded under seal to obey items 1 and 2 and provide within 7 calendar days from receipt of this demand by mail, 12 items 3 through 8 to the address above, or resign the office immediately. Failure to comply with all the demands of this Quo Warranto will be an admission of your intentional and willful engagement in RICO and high treason against the peoples, and will be subject to presentments or indictments for immediate removal from office and criminal prosecution for the committing of illicit and ongoing crimes in a wheel and chain of conspiracy. Ordered under seal, originally filed on the Marine Corps birthday, the 10th of November, 2014, refiled May 13, 2015, bearing the seal of the Unified United States Grand Jury, 1215 AD, filed in the U.S. Supreme Court, all U.S. district courts, and all U.S. judges. Approximately 1 month later, on the 12th of June, 2015, the Department of Defense issued an updated Law of War manual, promulgating it pursuant to Department of Defense Directive 2311, DoD Law of War Program, May 9, 2006, Department of Defense Directive 5145, General Counsel of the Department, and 10 U.S. Code, Section 140 from 2012. Just a few days later, Donald Trump would come down the escalator in 2015 and change the course of American history forever. I submit to each of you that with the filing of this warrant, with the filing, of this writ in the U.S. Supreme Court and all U.S. courts, commanding all U.S. public officials on all public official levels, all United States courts, congressmen, senators, assemblymen, governors, county sheriffs, federal special agents, U.S. Marshals, Joint Chiefs, and leaders of state and militia. I submit that this document was filed and was not affirmatively received, which gave us the basis to launch a continuity of government operation in an extraordinary fashion to return the United States of America to common law. And I believe throughout that process, we have seen that continuity of government operation leverage the chancery courts that writ just discussed against themselves. One of those leverages occurred on July the 1st of 2020 in case number 220-CV-05912. Deborah Connor, Chief Money Laundering and Asset Forfeiture Section, Mary Butler, Woos Lee, Barbara Levy, Joshua Sohn, Jonathan Baum, trial attorney for United States Criminal Divisions and International Units, United States Department of Justice, against all funds on deposit in Bank Privé Edmond de Rothschild, account number 0610 and 1751. And Anons, some of the things that are asked for and outlined in this lawsuit, against this Rothschild bank, it's not just funds and it's not just assets. These are international treasures. Let me see here. The defendants in this action are all funds on deposit in account number 0610 and account number 1751 held by Eagle Strategic Investment Fund and Bank Rothschild in Luxembourg, as more particularly described in the below attachment. Contemporaneously with the filing of this complaint, the plaintiff is also filing actions seeking civil forfeiture of the following assets: the Basquiat drawing, a Warhol portrait, an Ave Raphael apartment complex, a Campbell soup can and Véthuil au Soleil painting, a River de Fund, all funds and assets, including securities held by River de International South Africa or Saudi Arabia at Falcon Private Bank. Plaintiff also files actions seeking the return, including any rights of profit, royalties, and distribution of the Wolf of Wall Street, the Le Hermitage property, the Le Hermitage business asset, separate case number CV16-5369, the Hillcrest property in Beverly Hills, California, the Park Laurel condominium in New York, a Bombardier jet registration number N689WM, the Time Warner penthouse located in New York, New York, the Oriole mansion located in Los Angeles, California, the Green condominium located in New York, New York, the AMI assets located in Publishing Group North America Holdings, the Walker Tower penthouse in New York, New York, the Laurel Beverly Hills mansion in Beverly Hills, California, various Van Gogh artworks held in titled La Maison de Vincent Arlet, a St. George's painting, a Petite Nymphea Preside, the Quintas penthouse, the Stratton penthouse, and much, much more. These go on for a number of pages. We are utilizing a suspended common law, corporate law, military law hybrid situation to leverage the entirety of that system against itself and to literally eat out its own substance. It is the most incredible, remarkable, and amazing time to be alive. And this process carries us through all of the way towards this election season and beyond. It will not end with the return of President Donald Trump to the White House. It will not end with the return of we the people to the powers, to the pulpits of power that are entrusted to us in all of our communities at all of our various levels in our municipalities and localities around the world. It will begin a next phase. We must get an accounting of everything. We must do it legally and lawfully. We must impact society in the ways that it can be impacted in the most effective manner and in the best fashion. We must leverage what we can of the old system and destroy what we cannot. And we are witnessing and bearing, I think, bearing a witness to that very period of time in history. I am so excited whenever I get together with each of you on air to discuss these things on these files because it reminds me of how far we've come. It reminds me of where we're going, and it reminds me of why we're here. I appreciate all of you very much. I hope as you conclude the file today, you will reflect on some of those victories, whether it is the crushing of the International Monetary Fund and SWIFT system, whether it is the liberation of the African subcontinent for the first time in nearly 1,000 years, whether it is the transitioning of a hegemony located at the very top of the Western world to a more multi-angular, multi-dimensional power share that is more fair and more just. Whatever your positive reflection, whatever your optimistic note as you conclude today, I hope that you will remember it is because of the soul within each of you, the soul within all of us, that this is even happening at all. It is a remarkable, powerful, and unique moment in all of human and world history. And here you stand, and here you sit. It's been a true pleasure. I'll be back with each of you again soon. Stay safe, everyone. Enjoy that outside air. We'll talk soon. This is SG Anon. Thanks. Bye-bye.